You smirk because nobody really knows what's going to happen next now, do they?
Right, and the Speaker has a history of pulling these, of surprising us, and he's not exactly helped Theresa May along the way, and it's not been easy for her. The pressure now, of course, is for her to go to the summit, face all those people, 27 leaders, head on, and say, listen, give me something, because I cannot put my vote back. So give me another piece of paper, give me something to work for, because if not, I'm stuck. And I think that's looking like the next possible scenario.
Flavia, he says the same Brexit deal, so this deal without changes. Are there some cosmetic changes that she could make that would then pass his smell test?
He wants it to be different. How different it needs to be is up for debate. But he said, listen, you've lost by 149 votes. You cannot, citing this 400-year-old convention, put the same vote again. So this really puts the pressure on her to either get something from the DUP, but essentially from the EU, and say, listen, I know we've been down this road before, but I need something more. There's a sense that she's been trying for the past week to convince the hardliners and say, listen, it's either my deal or no deal. That pressure is still there and doesn't go away. And the EU, one must remember, is dying to have this over and done with. So they might, we shouldn't rule out the fact that at that summit with all leaders, they will come up with something else that she can take back.
Was it our sense that she had the votes to allow her potential? If this had gone to the House of Commons tomorrow, would it have passed? Would the threat of a long extension have had an effect on the DUP, have had an effect on the ERG? I
hate to say this, you can answer it two ways. She lost the first one by more than 200. She narrowed it down to 150. The signs are that it would have been very hard for her to get this through even tomorrow. It would have been tighter. What we're dealing with is essentially a constituency that are very unpredictable and are not cowed by the threat that it's either her deal or no Brexit, and that is essentially her negotiating chip. If she can convince them that Brexit is going to disappear unless it's her deal, but they're not buying it, they're not convinced. And I think that's really what's at the crux of why she's having such a hard time.
Flavia, does Europe have to sign off on any kind of changes? Is there anything that can be done domestically or within Theresa May's office that would satisfy things, or does this need to be a much bigger, substantive change?
I mean, the EU has been very clear that it's not going to have substantial changes, right? So at the end of the day, it can only offer tweaks. And the crux of it is whether someone, for example, like Cox, the Attorney General, sort of comes back and says, actually, I've looked at this and I think we can live with it. I mean, remember, we've had a series of shocks in the past 2 weeks. Last week, Cox was expected to essentially give May the green light and tell the Brexiteers, listen, this passes my test, it should pass yours. And he pulled the rug under her. And essentially the Speaker today has done the same thing.
Just in terms of the headlines that we're getting and watching so carefully, the Speaker is saying over the last few minutes that demonstrable changes to the deal are needed. The Brexit deal must be fundamentally different. That sounds, to Vonnie's point about the kind of the changes that are needed here, that sounds quite significant.
Yes, no, it does. And again, she could go to the summit and say, listen, I need more, and they could provide her something that she could sell as such. But to your point, I mean, this opens the door to all sorts of things. Does she revoke Article 50? Are we heading into a new general election? Because that would essentially change Parliament and change the configuration. So all these other options that have been sort of peering at us from behind are suddenly becoming into sharper relief.